So now that you are familiar with the various tables, and we've ensured that they all have a primary key, we are going to relate the tables. So we're basically going to connect them so they can share information. And also by connecting them, we can ensure that the data remains accurate. So in order to create a relationship, you have to make sure that nothing is open. So we don't have the tables. If we had reports and forms and different things, none of them can be open. They all have to be closed. And then we're going to go into database tools and we're going to select relationships. Now, in order to create a relationship, we actually have to add the tables to the window. So I'm going to click on Show Table. And then to get the table into the window, you can either single click and click on Add, or what I normally do is I just double click and add the tables that way. Now, what happens if you get the table in there twice? And I know this will happen to one of you. If that happens, you just right click on the extra table. Oh, first, we've got to close that. Right click on the extra table and then hide it. Okay, so to add the tables, you click Show Table and double click. If you have an extra one, you have to close out of here. You right click and you hide it. Now, one thing that I do when I come in here is I do resize my tables just so that I can see all of the fields, because it makes relating the tables a little bit easier. And the first relationship we are going to create is between suppliers and products. And most relationships are going to be a one-to-many relationship. And so kind of looking at this, a single supplier can provide multiple projects or products. So supplier is our one and products is our many. And what you'll notice in the product table is that supplier ID is listed there. And in a one-to-many relationship, you will typically have the primary key in one table is a foreign key or common field in the table that you want to relate it to. So basically, supplier ID has been placed in products so that we can do this relationship. It is the primary key in supplier, and it's a common field in products. Okay? It's called a common field because it exists in both supplier and products. And it's a special kind of common field because it's a primary key in supplier. Now, it's not a key in product, okay? But because it is a key in supplier, it's a common field, but it's also called a foreign key. See, a foreign key is a common field that is a primary key in another table. So to do this relationship, we are going to point to supplier ID, and we're going to left drag it right on top of supplier ID in the product table. Okay. And when we've got it right on top, we're going to release the left button, and that's going to display this edit relationship window. Now, one thing you want to check right away is to make sure your tables are correct and that the field that you're connecting is correct. Because sometimes we'll drag something and we'll release it in the wrong spot. Okay, so those are two things you need to double check. Make sure the table and the field are correct. At the bottom, it should say one-to-many. Sometimes it will also say one-to-one. Okay. If it says indeterminate, there is definitely a problem. Either you dragged the wrong way, like you went from supplier ID up to the primary key, or you selected the completely wrong fields. Okay, so that's why if you check the fields ahead of time, your relationship should be okay. Now, once you get in here and you've verified the tables and the fields, you're going to go ahead and turn on the integrity rules. And basically what these different rules do is they just ensure that the data that you're entering stays in sync and that it's accurate. So basically, we can't have a product for a supplier that doesn't exist. Okay, so it's not going to let us add something in products unless the supplier is in that table first. If the supplier ID changes, it will go through products and change it in there. And if we went and deleted a supplier ID, it would delete all corresponding products. And that's what these rules are saying. So I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and you are going to see the one-to-many symbol with something called a join line. So that is our first relationship. Now the next relationship is going to be between products and orders. And a single product can be on multiple orders. And then you'd actually hope that it was on multiple orders because that would mean you're selling a bunch of them. Okay, so one product can be on multiple orders. So the one table in this case is products. The many is going to be orders. So I would expect to see product ID as a foreign key in my order table, and it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the product ID from products on top of the product ID in orders. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to release it when it's right on top. And then you just double check to make sure your tables are correct and that it is connecting the correct field. And in this case, they only want you to turn on referential integrity. Typically, you would turn on all of them. Basically, they're having you do this so that you can later on edit the join line so you can learn how to edit. So we're only going to turn on the one. Okay, and we're going to click create. And you'll see that it still looks like a one-to-many, but because we didn't cascade updates and we didn't cascade deletes, if we were to delete a product, product ID, it wouldn't do anything to the orders. Okay, and if we change the product ID number, it's not going to do anything to orders. So typically you do turn on those cascade features, but in this case we did not. Now, once you create these relationships, you are going to hit save because this window does need to be saved. And as far as printing, you can print out a relationship report. So if we click on that button, this is what it would look like. Okay, and for documentation purposes, you know, if you have a manual, this is actually a pretty useful printout. For us, not quite so useful because it's an online class and you guys are not going to be turning this in. So we're going to go ahead and close out of that. And we will close this as well. And you don't need to save it. Okay, I just want you to be aware of how to get that printout. And at this point, you should be back to your regular window. If you are still in the relationship window, let me see. If you're still over here, hit close, and that'll get you out of it.